Thank you to the Bolton Hope Foundation for including me in this project, for allowing me to speak as part of the One Health, One Future project, which seems to me very important, a very, very uh, crucial idea at this point. So I'll introduce myself. My name is David Quammen. I'm an American. I'm a science journalist and author of books. I live in snowy Montana in the USA. And 8 years ago, I published a book titled Spillover: Animal Infections and the Next Human Pandemic. I'd been researching it for 5 years because I had become interested in the ecology and evolutionary biology of scary viruses. My career has been mostly focused on writing about ecology and evolutionary biology, about Charles Darwin, about conservation in wild places around the world. I walked through the Congo for National Geographic on an assignment through the forest, and we went through Ebola territory. I learned about the ecology of the Ebola virus, this very dangerous virus, and that made me very interested in the whole subject of viruses that emerge from wild animals and infect people, called zoonotic viruses. In 2012, I published this book, Spillover: Animal Infections in the Next Human Pandemic, because I realized that this is also a study of ecology and evolutionary biology, the scary viruses that emerge from animals. Now, everything comes from somewhere, and dangerous new viruses found to be infecting humans, they come from wild animals. Why is that? Well, it's because viruses can only live in cellular creatures. A virus is not a cell. A virus is just a little capsule containing a genome, containing DNA or RNA, genetic instructions to build more virus capsules. But it can't do that unless it has infected a living cell. Cellular creatures are animals, plants, fungi, bacteria. We humans, our bodies are composed of cells, complex cells that can take genetic information and turn that into the structural and process elements of life, into proteins. Viruses can't do that. Viruses are only genetic parasites. So they infect cells, they hijack the machinery of cells to produce more copies of themselves. We know that we live in a world of viruses. The animals, plants, fungi, bacteria of our wild, diverse ecosystems are all filled with unique viruses. I've seen one estimate that within animals, there are 1.7 million different kinds of viruses. Within mammals alone, we belong to the class mammals, but within mammals alone, there may be 320,000 unique viruses. If you find a rodent, a new species of rodent, if you find a bat, if you find a porcupine living in the Congo forest, that animal will have unique viruses, unique kinds of viruses. So some of those viruses are capable of infecting humans. How does that happen? Well, it happens because we humans come in contact with wild animals. We go into diverse ecosystems. We capture animals and ship them to market for food in some cases, or we kill animals to eat. We cut down the great trees of the forest. We build timber camps. We build mining camps. We extract strategic minerals. We extract fossil fuel. And as we do all this, we cause disruption of those wild ecosystems. We come in contact with those wild animals and we expose ourselves to the viruses that they carry. We give viruses an opportunity to spill over from their natural animal host into a human. Sometimes just a single human is where it all starts. Viruses don't seek us out. They don't climb into us. Viruses can't walk, they can't run, they can't swim, they can't fly. They ride viruses. They ride within the creatures that they infect. So when we come into contact with wild animals, we give the viruses that they carry an opportunity to spill over into us. And that's why my book was titled Spillover. Now, spillover is the moment, the event, when a pathogen, an infectious agent of some sort, it could be a bacterium, it could be a virus or some other infectious agent. Spillover is when that infectious creature spills from its non-human host into its first human victim. Let's talk about viruses in particular. The contact with wild animals gives the viruses the opportunity to spill over into humans. If a spillover results in one person infected, it ends there. But if the virus finds that it can replicate abundantly in that human and then transmit from one human to another, and then to another, and then to another, possibly on a breath, on a sneeze, on a cough, or possibly through bodily fluids, then that event, when a dozen people or 2 dozen or 3 dozen people are infected in some remote village, we call that an outbreak. Outbreaks happen frequently and we don't hear about most of them. If an outbreak spreads, if the viral pathogen can transmit easily from one human to another, to another, to another, to another, and it gets from the remote village to another village, to a provincial town, to the capital city of a country, then you have an epidemic, thousands of people infected. And if the virus rides in a human to an international airport and gets on a plane and flies from, for instance, Wuhan to Milano, or from Wuhan to Los Angeles, or from Wuhan to London, and spreads in new countries, then you have a pandemic, a global event. And of course, that's what we have now with COVID-19. So I want to repeat, because this is very important for the One Health, One Future project and the idea of One Health. We are all connected, human health, animal health, ecosystem health. It's all one health, and we need to be concerned for that health into the future. So it's important to remember that it begins with ecological disruption. Spillovers begin with ecological disruption. And it's one, I think, of 3 great problems that we have on this planet. Ecological disruption causes loss of biological diversity, the extinction of wonderful species, butterflies and beetles and frogs and primates, monkeys and lemurs and rhinoceroses and flightless birds going extinct around the world because of human disruption of ecosystems and use of resources. That's one big problem, loss of biological diversity. It's a tragedy in its own right. Second big problem we have is climate change. We have been burning so much fossil fuel that we have, as you well know, we have filled the atmosphere with carbon and methane and have begun changing drastically the climate of planet Earth with important repercussions, including repercussions for human health. The third problem is the threat of pandemic disease. So we have these 3 problems: climate change, loss of biological diversity, and the threat of pandemic disease. Does one cause the other? Not directly most of the time, but they are interconnected because they are all driven by the same ultimate causes. What are the ultimate causes? Human population size, human population growth, and human consumption. There are 8 billion of us humans on the planet right now. We are a wonderful species. We're intelligent. We create music. We create art. We create literature. We create science. We do wonderful things, but we're also a hungry species. We consume resources. We consume timber. We consume meat. We consume fossil fuel. We're bringing the resources from the entire rest of the natural world toward ourselves so that we can consume those resources to feed our families, to feed ourselves, to survive, and in some cases, to live luxurious lives and to waste resources, which is a tragedy. So in doing that, we bring these viruses toward ourselves. We bring climate change upon the planet, and we bring the loss of biological diversity. Those three great problems, all caused by the same factors. I think of it as three great rivers of trouble: climate change, loss of biological diversity, and pandemic threat, all flowing down from a snowfield on a single mountain, one snowfield on one mountain, and our human activities, consumption, population growth, are melting that snowfield and feeding these three great rivers of trouble. We can solve these problems, though. This is not a hopeless situation. That's what One Health, One Future is about. We can solve these problems by thinking about what we are doing, by understanding that we need to live in some level of moderated balance with the rest of the natural world. We need to do everything we can to reduce the size of our footprint that comes smashing down on the rest of the natural world. We have an individual footprint, each of us, and we have a collective footprint, humanity generally. All of the choices that we make, the things that we do, what we eat, what we wear, what we buy, how much we travel, how many children we have when we're adults, if we have children at all. All of these contribute to our individual footprint on the natural world. This is not just about people eating wild animals in villages in Africa or in towns in China. This is about things that we all do. For instance, if you have a cell phone, you are a customer for a mineral called coltan, that is used to make tantalum capacitors, a kind of a component that lives inside your cell phone, lives also inside your laptop computer. Without coltan, these devices cannot be made. Where is coltan found? It's mined in only a few places around the world, including areas of the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, within wonderful wild ecosystems, even protected ecosystems, national forests, sanctuaries, national parks in Eastern Congo, Kahuzi-Biega National Park in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Right there are coltan mines where men and women are working hard, being paid not very much money to mine coltan out of the earth for our cell phones. What do those people eat? Can they go to a grocery store and buy a frozen chicken? No, there's no grocery store there. Can they bring food in with them? No, they eat what's available. They need protein, so they eat meat. What's the meat they eat? In most cases, we can trust that it is wild animals. There are species of rodent, there are species of monkey, there are species of porcupine, there are species of bat that people eat if they have nothing else to eat. And in doing that, they expose themselves to new viruses, dangerous viruses that could pass from those wild animals into humans. Why are they doing that? Because they need to eat, they need a little bit of money, and we are paying them to do that because we want our cell phones. So there's responsibility for everyone. There's a share of the responsibility in all of the choices that we make. But there is also hope. There are things that we can do. We can make different choices. We can consume less. We can think about how many children we're going to have. We can think about how much we travel. I travel a lot, or I used to travel a lot to do my research before COVID-19. Now I travel to my office, or I live in this office with my friend Boots the Python in that tank, and my wife and our two dogs and our cat. I don't travel during COVID. I travel by Zoom. That's how I get to speak with you. That's a choice for me. It's an improvement. I'm not burning as much fossil fuel. When COVID is over, I will travel less. It's a decision that we can each make to reduce our impact on the natural world that has these terrible consequences. Now, you've heard so much about COVID-19. Let me tell you a little bit more. COVID-19 is a virus that belongs to the coronavirus family. Back in 2012, when I published Spillover, I predicted, not because I was foresightful, but because I was listening to very smart scientists, I predicted that a new pandemic was coming. This was 8 years ago. And I said that it'll probably be caused by a virus, a new virus. That virus will come out of a wild animal. What kind of a wild animal? Well, possibly a monkey, possibly a bat. What kind of a virus? Well, a kind of virus that evolves relatively quickly, such as an influenza virus or a coronavirus. Where would that occur? Well, some place where people come in contact with wild animals, killing them, capturing them, and taking them to market, or possibly just mining the guano, the bat feces, in a cave where bats roost. So now we have COVID-19. How did it happen? It happened in that way. It happened in the way that scientists were telling me 8 years ago it would happen. It was predictable. What wasn't predictable was how unprepared we humans were to deal with it, how unprepared our national leaders, particularly the leader of my nation at that time, were to deal with it. And so it spread around the world. It infected 100 million people. It has killed more than 2 million people as of today. I think 2.3 million people. It has been a horrible tragedy. Was it inevitable that it was going to happen? No, it was inevitable that viruses would spill out of wild animals and get into humans and cause outbreaks. But it was not inevitable that outbreaks would turn into epidemics and an epidemic would turn into a pandemic. That's why there is hope. We can do things about this. We can do things about it in two ways. First of all, we can think about our own individual footprint on the natural world and our collective human footprint in order to lessen the chance of spillovers. But we can also, as voters, as citizens, as people of the world, we can cooperate with one another. We can bring in wise, foresightful national leaders. We can vote them in if we are fortunate enough to live in a democracy, such as Italy or the United States. And we can ensure that they prepare for the next pandemic with international agreements, cooperation, scientific collaboration, fast communication, preparation of diagnostic test kits for viruses that haven't spilled over yet, preparation of vaccine platforms, vaccine backbones that can be modified for a new virus. We can do this by supporting science, supporting the education of young people in science. If we are young people, by learning about science, learning about how science is a wonderful process for discovering how the world works. Science is not a body of facts that you memorize. Science is a human activity like ballet or football that can be performed in order to understand better how the world works. We have science, we have public health. If we have good leadership, if we have involved citizens, if we have young people being trained in science, we can prevent the next spillover from becoming a pandemic. That's what we need to do. And the fact that we can do it is why we have hope. We need one health, one future, and we have great hope that we can do that. So, grazie mille. It's been a pleasure to talk with you. You all be well, keep smiling. We will get through COVID-19 and you will have your lives back. Yes.